I'm David Marsh. Welcome to Exploring the Human Journey.
Exploring the Human Journey.
Almost everyone knows that we're made up of energy, yet there isn't a lot of information that we're taught after that. This is about understanding that energy is vibration. There's high vibrating energy and there's low vibrating energy. And that's it. And then there's this whole spectrum in between, but the goal is to be as high vibrating as possible. That's what we all really want. And so it's about getting all that other low vibrating energy out of the way so that we can be our authentic selves. It started out with Reiki and developed into polarity and craniosacral therapy, and I also got certified in reflexology and did toe reading certifications and just sort of started combining hypnotherapy and NLP and all these other modalities and just started kind of combining them into this energy work session that really helps people become either profoundly healed and enlightened, or there's just some sort of shift that allows them to move forward. It's not about moving on always. Sometimes it's just about moving forward. It's something that is intended to be powerful and to give someone their power back. There's so many ways that we unintentionally give it away, and it's about pinpointing those areas, setting healthy boundaries, doing daily self-care. I would say if you're ready to hear the truth about yourself, that's the type of person that will find me. Practicing what you preach is really important to me. I recommend that my clients exercise, and I exercise. I made the decision to become vegan, which has been a great decision for me. So I'm happy to share the information that I've learned on that experience as well. But trying to find some form of self-care is just super important.
Hi and welcome. I'm so glad you joined us. Today, my special guest is Christine Noble. She's awesome. She's a medical intuitive. She's an artist and a speaker. Christine, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Now, I love on your website how you say, if you want to feel good and be happy, this is a place for you. So tell us, feel good, be happy. I like that. Tell me more about that.
Thank you. One of my goals isn't really to share as much about me as helping people understand the truth about themselves.
Awesome.
And that we're all made up of energy, and we all have a right to know how it flows and how it works within each of us. That's the one thing that consciousness is raising now. People are realizing, wait a minute, so I'm not just a human being, I'm that spiritual being, and then, well, let's go deeper, and now you get into the energy. So you've been integrated into the healing arts as a medical intuitive. Now that's an intuitive thing, you're getting hits. Kind of tell me how that thing forms for you, has formed. Give me some of your background, how you work in that modality. Well, it's something that I've always had, and then I learned how to develop it further, and I feel like we all have innate abilities to be intuitive and to pick up on either gut responses or our own intuition. And with me personally, it's not about trying harder, it's about resisting less.
Oh, okay, tell me more.
I've had these abilities as a child, and then I turned all of them off, and I felt like I was going crazy, and I was having a lot of panic attacks and a variety of diagnosable disorders. And so I got on medication for a while and just decided that I'd had enough of that life and that it was just masking symptoms, and I really wasn't any closer to wellness. So I got off all the prescriptions, and that's when I say the floodgates really opened, where the intuitive abilities were no longer suppressed, and the prescription drugs were actually suppressing my natural abilities.
I've heard people say that.
Others.
They're saying that kind of like numbs them out, and they can't feel anything.
The antidepressants didn't make me stop being depressed. They just made it to where I didn't care as much. I was depressed.
Yeah.
Which is not in any happier state to be in.
Yeah, I've had friends, family members, and they've been helped by an antidepressant for a period of time, and that's great. But then it becomes a thing within them where they're like, okay, what's the next thing? And they're realizing they need to be free and clear. And I imagine you probably had something like that.
Absolutely. What started out as 3 medications after 3 years turned into 7.
Whew.
And it was just like one, I would make complaints about one, and so there would just be another prescription to piggyback on top of the other.
Yeah.
And it was just a never-ending cycle of being a customer in the pharmaceutical industry.
Man, industrial medical complex loves to prescribe pills because pills fix everything and it's a quick fix, and we as consumers like pills. But I imagine you probably feel like there's other ways in addition to medicines or pharmaceuticals. There's other ways that we can create healing, and I imagine that you have a unique perspective on that.
Well, for me, it was like the change was forced on me because I was so saturated with medications, and I just was super fatigued because my adrenals were completely inundated with all these medications. So I had no choice. And I feel like part of my mission here is to help people understand that there are other choices. And I felt like there weren't any others at the time. I had my brain scanned, and they determined that my brain was highly overactive and not normal.
Oh, wow.
As I love to put in quotes, because neurodiversity is getting to a different point where when I had my brain scanned, that was in 2005, and it was like, your brain is highly overactive and you need to be medicated. And now they're looking at neurodiversity, which is basically when someone's brain isn't functioning in a normal, again, I use in a normal capacity, meaning that they have what the brain should look like versus what some of them do look like. And that neurodiversity actually has come out in the autism spectrum. It comes out in the schizophrenia, bipolar. All of these are actually indications of someone who has other spectrums of gifts or abilities, such as a highly artistic person or someone with a photographic memory. A lot of times people that end up on these spectrums also have these contrary, really unusual abilities that go along with them.
So you have an active brain that's always moving. Was that the brain scan? Was that something detrimental, or was it something that needed a diagnosis of abnormality? What was that about?
I started experiencing some mediumship around that time, and so
you get part of your brain lighten up where they didn't expect to see it, or something.
Where I didn't expect to see it.
Yeah. And
so it was. I felt like it was a good idea to try to determine what was wrong with me, in which now I'm to the point where I embrace it, and I've learned to use the abilities that I have to help other people heal themselves. But them understanding it's not about believing in me, it's about believing in you.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's people that have those intuitive hits, that mediumship that's coming to them, and they're like, am I going crazy? Give some presence to that to help folks that are kind of experiencing that awakening within themselves.
Yeah, that's a really awesome point. I do feel like if someone is, for example, telepathic, how are they going to know they're telepathic unless they really wrap their minds around understanding that? For me personally, I used to experience a lot of panic attacks and anxiety because I was picking up on other people's energy, and I didn't realize that I was doing that. So, like, my first experience with a panic attack, I was at the Arizona State Fair. My friends thought I was nuts because they were like, "Why are you afraid to go into the fair?"
Oh, wow.
And it was because I was picking up on all the energy of all the people there, the rides, the lights, the noise, everything I thought was all related to me. So of course I thought I was going crazy.
Yeah.
And being able to understand a mental disorder isn't really a disorder, it's just a neurodiversity or something neurologically that might be different than what the average person has.
Yeah. So you're picking up these empathic things, and then you're feeling, you're sensing these energies. And at the time, were you a young person that didn't know how to deal with that? I mean, what was that?
I was in my 30s at that time.
Okay, so you've got some life experience, and so then you've had a pattern of this hasn't happened and now it is. So then you think you're crazy.
Definitely thought it was maybe time to do some checking in. And I just learned to find a place for these abilities and use them in a way that can help others to heal themselves and to ignite their own lights.
That's good. Okay, so you're a person that looks at somebody energetically and you can sense and feel. Give me some presence about someone comes to you and says, Christine, I need some help. I'm, whatever that thing is in their life that they need to change. They want to personally grow. They want to expand in their spirituality, or they feel like they've got a hang up and they don't feel good. Maybe they're holding on to something and they're like, yeah, I'm always struggling with back pain, or, there's some pain in their body that's being stored. Are you able to see what that energy is with them?
It's sometimes visual, sometimes I can hear messages. It really depends on the person and their own individual needs. It's kind of like having a personal computer and look at your body like it's your own personal computer. We all have computers, but none of them are exactly the same. And it's about understanding how our own computers work and how they flow, and that we all record information. But what's really significant is that we not only are we recording information constantly that's going on around us, we're also recording the perception of what's going on around us. And so that's a really important key to understanding why forgiveness is such a huge element, because it's a big process of the healing experience, or understanding that.
Yeah, so holding on to something, that letting that go and let that emotion move through, is that what you're meaning?
It's about understanding specific development. So you mentioned pain, and I've worked with a lot of people that have dealt with chronic pain, and I always say chronic pain equals chronic guilt. So the body is recording this information. So if you look at your body like it's a giant computer, and the mainframe is your brain, but there's also your body, which is like a battery. And the batteries in our car are made of about 80% water, just like we are.
Sure.
There's also an electrical charge in the car battery. There's also our electrical charge, which is our nervous system. So you have these two elements. Then you have the element of the mainframe, or the computer system, which is the brain. And it's about understanding that the brain is designed to think. And it doesn't care if we think positively or negatively.
That's true.
It's just going to run the system. And your brain doesn't care about your relationship with your mom. And it doesn't care about your relationship with the person in the car in front of you. However, if you think the person in the car in front of you is an asshole, guess who becomes the asshole? We do. Because the system is designed to survive for us. So any of these thoughts that we have reverberate back to us. And then if we have a thought that repeats itself, then we are creating an actual file in our computer system. And so one of my abilities is to read all those files.
Nice. So you can kind of give some presence to what that might be, and kind of. So I suppose you ask a lot of questions then.
I do ask a lot of questions. A lot of them are designed to help the person create an aha moment. So one of the first questions is, who is blocking you?
Because if I have that sense of discovery, man, is that powerful, versus if you tell me that thing.
It's about giving people their power back. And also understanding it is a responsibility. Once we realize we are so powerful and we are active in our own energetic fields, it does create that sense of power back. And we find all these ways where we've been giving our power away.
That's so good. There's so many times where people are giving their power, giving their authority away, whether it's to in a relationship, or to an employer, or to a religious belief system or something. That's something I'm really passionate about is maintaining your own sense of personal authority.
Completely.
Yeah.
A lot of that has to do with the belief system and understanding. Do you remember how I talked about the computer? So for all our beliefs, those are each files. And those files can grow and grow. And a lot of people have so many beliefs that they don't have any room in their file system to believe in themselves, which is the most important element.
Yeah.
So giving our power away means if a doctor tells you you're going to have this for the rest of your life, which is what they told me. They said you're going to be on medication for the rest of your life. And I didn't believe them. But what if I had?
Yeah.
If I do believe that, then that becomes my reality.
Yeah.
And some people, it becomes their reality. So I get people that will say, what if? What if it's genetic? What if I slept on my neck wrong? Or what if it's my shoes? What if it's a virus, that the flu that everyone's getting? So first of all, it's not your shoes. If it were really your shoes, then it would be on both feet, or like everyone that wore those shoes would get the same issues you're getting. Why aren't they? This is that element of understanding that all our computers are just a little bit different. And if there's a file that's a virus, it creates a vulnerability in our energy system, and that will fall in some area of the body. So like when someone complains about shoulder pain, for example, I had someone say, why does my shoulder hurt? And I said, your shoulder hurts because you feel guilty about the way your dad passed away.
Oh, wow.
And that aha moment is all that is needed to create the healing process. But that person has to be able to understand that's when they can change. When we change our brain, we change our life.
Yes. Oh, so good.
Right. So the other question is, okay, what if it's a flu virus and I got sick because everyone's getting sick? And it's like, well, not everyone really got sick. This is what explains, this is how we really get sick. It's not from outside things. We get sick because we are very creative beings and we create our own realities.
Oh, it's so good.
So then someone's like, well, what if it's genetic? And I say, if you have a genetic disease, it's because all of you are sharing the same shitty thought about something. And we all pass it around. We love each other, so we want to share in the burden, and that's how we end up creating genetic diseases. It's a cycle that's meant to be broken.
That's so important, because there's so many things that we develop these patterns, and these are cycles that need to be broken. Now, I did yoga teacher training, Gail, and I did that in 2018, and we learned about the samskara, the rut that we get stuck in. And how in yoga we have to break our samskaras, or we have to form new samskaras, and that was, the term that they use in yoga. But those are the same programs you're talking about that we need to basically overwrite. We need to reprogram, if you will. What are some things that comes up for people that you are able to kind of guide and direct to do some reprogramming in that case?
It's about understanding, first of all, the brain will think regardless. So part of reprogramming is letting go of the old programming and then creating something new in its place. So one great trick I have is having a mantra or incorporating journaling or some positive affirmation that you're saying to yourself that is the exact opposite of what created whatever the pathology was.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I like how on your website it says, my mind on my mantra, my mantra on my mind.
Yes.
I love that. It was so good.
Yes, because that's what the brain does. It's going to think whether we program it or not. So it's almost like, you know how our cars, we have different radio stations that we can program into our cars.
Yeah.
Some of those radio stations that are playing are actually your mom's stations or your dad's, or, a teacher that told you that you would never amount to anything. And so those programs, we can delete all those. And it doesn't mean you're going to always forget these traumatic moments or these moments in your history, but they can find a place in your life so that they're not taking over the whole field.
Yeah.
And part of creating duality in the mind is having a death rebirth.
Yeah.
So a lot of what my work ends up being energetically is about the death rebirth process and about being able to understand the power of our creativity and our true abilities.
Mm-hmm. I love that, because as a creative being, part of the godness of the divine, we're not separate, we're part of, and so we're here to have that creative expression. So many people get stuck in that mindset that, you know, the born, pay bills, and die scenario. I saw that, you know, you had referred to that as well, and that's just this mindset that we're given, especially in Western culture. And I love how when we get out of that mindset, that samskara, that rut of I'm just here and I get to retirement age and then my dreams will come true. It feels like there's such a better expression of self if you can be a co-creator with your reality here and now, and you can have joy, you can have happiness, if you will, you can have those things that you desire, rather than struggling all the time. We weren't created to struggle and suffer.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Happiness is a decision.
Yeah. So one of the things that I really like on your platform is you're talking about feeling better, being creative, growing as a person, and creating meaningful life experiences. What are some things that people come to you for and they're like, Christine, I got to do this and help me. How are you able to help them move from a place of desiring something into a place of actually tangibly manifesting that?
It's been a really wide range of clients that I've had. Some people come to me because they're sick and they want to be well. I've had some people come to me because they want to improve their golf game. There are many levels of understanding, but energy is energy. And so when someone has a disease, that means that there is a blockage there. And I'm like, who is blocking you? Well, it's always you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about getting to the source of whatever the blockage is, whatever the pathology is, so that we can move it out of the way and the person can embrace their true self. Because any negativity that we're carrying, any burden that we're carrying is not the true part of us. Anything that involves suffering is not the authentic self, and not part of the soul. And it's about understanding that we have the power to make those changes ourselves.
Yeah, that authenticity is so important. There are folks that find themselves in situations where they feel like they're out of control. They feel like they've made a decision, whether they got fired from a job or they have a relationship situation, or maybe there's a death in the family or something like that. So when we're told, hey, we can co-create our reality, there are external circumstances outside of our control. And so what is the thing that you kind of tell people how to move into, of being aware that there are circumstances, but yet at the same time not letting that control the internal, the internal mood or the internal feel that someone has?
Again, is it control or is it less resistance and getting out of our own way? Like, you're never going to be able to swing a golf club well if you're thinking about what's going on at home while you're hitting the ball.
That's good.
And it's really about us getting out of our own way, or in the death rebirth process, it's like killing off a part of our ego that we no longer need by defining. So we define old you and new you. And I actually write this down with everyone, and we draw a line in the page and then a cross. And on the left side of the page, we're going to attribute everything, all the blockages, all the negativity is going to be attributed to old you. And in contrast, then we have on the right side of the page all these lines that are contributed to new you. So it's about being able to understand the difference between who is what and how is old you making the present you old. I feel like the aging process is subject and that we don't have to get old. It's about understanding how to move the energy and how to flow with it.
Okay.
And understanding the chakra system.
Well, you look good for 75, so I just want everybody to know.
I'm 46.
I jest.
I am creeping up on 50,
Yeah.
and I want to live a life where I never feel old, no matter what age I am. And I think
good.
that's also a decision.
Yeah. Yeah. So that death rebirth process, the old, the new, do you shift that? I mean, are you writing things down saying, I used to be this, now I'm this? Is that how you're working that?
That's part of it. Also, part of it is understanding what is the source of old you. I did have a client that came to me for chronic fatigue issues. He'd been to 7 different doctors. The doctors all were like, we really don't know why you're experiencing this or what's wrong with you. In his 40s. And so we traced back his history, and we talked about his relationship with his mom, where he grew up with a mom that was constantly worried about him, and she was always afraid that something bad was going to happen to him.
Oh, boy.
So he started developing these ways to make her feel better. So he would take on her worries, take on that energy, and then as an adult, he continued in his daily life to constantly be afraid that something bad was going to happen to him. And guess what? Bad stuff happened to him all the time.
Oh, man. He's bringing that energy right in, isn't he?
He was attracting that energy by having these thoughts and having these recordings in the computer system. So that would be what I'd call a virus in our files. But it's about understanding, how did that get there? Where did this start? And that is really when the brain makes that aha moment. That's that virus. It stops for a moment and says, maybe there's more information here. And it will actually repair that old thought process if we do nothing. Or the aha moment is that opportunity that we have to change. And so for him, he wanted to change. And so for old him, I said, how does the chronic fatigue make you feel? He said, it makes me feel exhausted. So we write this down on the left side on the death. We're having a funeral, going out of business sale, I call it, for all that old energy. And I said, okay, now we have to have a contrast for new you, because the brain is designed to think. So it'll think positively, negatively, it doesn't care. The space needs to get filled, or it'll naturally fill itself. So I said, now, what are you going to be now that you're not going to be exhausted anymore? And it's about being able to define who is old you and then who is new you going to be after this day. This is your rebirth day. This is the last day we're going to focus on old you. And then we got to let him go.
Wow. So you kind of have a little ceremony or something?
We do have a ceremony. That's what the energy work process is for. So I spend about half of the sessions, or half of when I do speaking events, we spend a lot of time on the discussion and getting to the understanding of how this ceremony can develop and how you can use it in your daily life to create what you want as opposed to what you're getting.
That's so good. So you're changing the brain pattern, you're changing the thoughts, you're changing the rut that you've gotten in, and you're starting to put a new idea in there. So what are some of the techniques or the things that you're helping to put those new ideas in the mind?
Well, that's that new radio station, and we're going to make it playing your favorite song all day, every day. And we're tuned into one station at a time. And then we can build after that. But I like to start with one, because you want to make it as simple as possible, because the brain works at a really simple level. It's our minds that complicate things. So it's getting all that stuff out of the way and saying, this is me now. And for that client with chronic fatigue, his mantra was, I'm here to shine. And so we write it on Post-it notes. We put it up in places where we know we're going to see it. It's something I say it to yourself as soon as you get up in the morning. Say it to yourself as soon as when your head hits the pillow at night. And I guarantee if you follow this, it will change your life, because it's about energy and about understanding how to flow with it and how simple it really can be. And that is the essence of it. And then once that's in your mind, once it's recorded in there, then you can add another one. You can change it. You can develop it. But that can be the first of many of these radio stations that we are able to program ourselves.
So you kind of like give a mantra kind of specific to each person, or
Yes.
give them something to kind of focus their thoughts on then.
We create it together, but it's something that's specific to that person. Some people love to memorize a lot of words. Some people do a sound or something really concise, but you want to be able to work with the way you already learn. So if you're not a memorizer, don't create a mantra that's going to have a lot of words in it. Make it easy on yourself.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be easy.
That's good. I even you said you can make a simple sound or make it simple. Even in yoga, we would pull our shoulders up, take a deep breath, and go and make a sound. And even the simplicity of that, you feel so much better. It's like you're resetting your system.
Right.
You'd bring your shoulders up, you'd breathe in, and then on the exhale, you'd make a sound, and you just imagine whatever that thing is for the day, you let it go off, and that's just a simple thing. Then you incorporate a mantra, you incorporate something for your mind to grab a hold of and give it something to think upon while you're busy doing other things.
Right.
Here, mind, think about this, It's good. So people are looking for these things, and you're kind of tailoring it to each person.
Tailoring it to each person, to each computer.
Yeah.
And we also, when we write it down, we have approximately 4,000 to 6,000 nerve endings in between our hands and our brains.
Ooh.
So literally, when we write things down, we are committing it to our memory and putting it in a space where this can be our new reality. And then if I see that person again, once we do all this, I'll be like, what's your mantra?
Oh, so good.
You will be quizzed.
Yeah.
And that's really helpful in understanding whether or not it's really in there. If the person says, then it's not in there.
No, don't say that.
Most people, I find, if they do get that, hey, what's your mantra? Most people are like, it's right there, which means that's the time when you can program a new station. You can do another one.
Yeah.
And just build and build and build.
Yeah. Now, when someone comes to you and they say, Christine, you don't understand. I know you have a perfect life and you've never had any problems, but I'm suffering from anxiety. There's things that I'm really anxious about, and sometimes I'm afraid to go out of my house. Is there anything that you can say to relate to that person?
Oh, absolutely. As you already know, we've chatted about this before, but I'm all about being able to share relatable experiences, because I feel like, how could I help anyone out of the darkness if I've really never experienced it myself? And with anxiety in particular, I did take 7 Xanax a day at one point, which, if you know what that is,
wow.
it's,
how could you even sit up?
Right? I had a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. Huh.
And it's about being able to get to the point where you understand yourself and like just learning the truth about ourselves. It's like all these puzzle pieces. And the more pieces of our own puzzles we get back, the more awareness we have, and the more awareness we have, the more we are in charge of our own energy and our own creativity.
Oh, that's so good. Now, I love how you've given presence on your website. You have this beautiful story. The thing that got me was you were existing off of things that you'd get down at the local convenience store because you didn't want to go to the grocery store because of the energy you could feel. Give some presence to that, because there's people that feel there's like, I just can't go out in public. You've had that as part of an experience that you've gone through. I
have had that. I used to bring my dog or my bird with me pretty much everywhere I went.
What kind of bird?
I had a parrot for a while, and he used to just sit on my shoulder and hide in my hair.
Like a pirate.
I had been called that before, actually.
Without the eye patch.
Right?
And the peg leg. Wow. That's awesome.
And animals do help us, especially people that are super empathic. There's always that animal connection. And there were, I called it social retardation, because I really,
yeah.
there was a time period where I stuttered, and I was really not capable of being very social or communicating. And just over the years, the biggest thing that's helped me is self-care and exercise, and I became vegan, and I make the effort for myself in understanding that that's only going to help me be able to help others more.
Yeah.
It's a process, but I feel like awareness is the biggest key. And back then, I didn't know what I know now. I couldn't go to the grocery store because I was feeling all the energy of the fluorescent lights and all the people and the advertising. And like Walmart, forget it.
Talk about the lights and everything, let alone the people. Yeah.
And part of, for me, is the awareness of understanding what is really happening and being able to connect with that. And I would say that I have found, it's not really compartmentalization, but in a way it is. I've found a way to allow these intuitive abilities to help others, and so it doesn't take over my whole life like it used to. I had a lot of severe depression, and part of that was because I wasn't sharing my gifts with others.
Oh, wow. So sharing your gift with others helps release those feelings of depression and anxieties? Is that?
Absolutely. I had been fired from 7 different jobs, and even though I was trying to live an authentic life and go after jobs that I thought I'd be passionate about, or careers, they all were complete disasters because these intuitive abilities I was burying inside of me, and they forced their way out.
Wow. So was that something where you weren't in a right vibrational fit for the position, or was it you couldn't work through that situation? What is it about that intuition that didn't allow you to work in that capacity?
I wasn't, the medications were suppressing the abilities so that they weren't present in my everyday life. The medications were so that I could fit in and be that normal that I thought I was supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is that we think that being a good person means doing what we're told or what we're taught. And that doesn't necessarily end up aligning with our true authentic selves.
Yeah, that when to be a good person, you have to do what someone else tells you, and you can't listen to your heart. That doesn't always work. That gets you out of your alignment where you're supposed to be.
Exactly.
And I'm sure you've had those experiences where you recognize alignment. Do you find that alignment? I'm sure you find your alignment in your intuition. What do you have to say to people that are looking for that alignment and are starting to come into that intuitive ability where they're hearing and they're seeing and they're feeling?
When you're not aligned with your spirit, things like getting fired from the job, or it's a vibrational match. We're always looking for that vibration, and energy is energy, but it's either high vibrating or low vibrating. And so if you are vibrating at a level that's higher than your job, it's going to be very natural that one of you's got to go. And so that is a key element to understanding. If we get sick, that means we're out of alignment with our soul.
Oh, wow. That's really good, too. Put the context of the divinity, the godness, into basically tell me what God is to you.
Oh, I love how you put it like that. And I was asked this question recently, and I feel like God is all around us, but it's also inside of us. And that's part of what the alignment is about recognizing this unconditional love that's all around us. and being able to ignite that light inside that recognizes that unconditional love. I find, especially for empaths, it's very easy for us to be compassionate toward others, but we don't extend that back to ourselves.
Yes. Kind and gentle to yourself. You're like, oh, I can be kind to the stranger. I can open the door for someone.
The self-care.
And I say, oh, thank you to the person that I'm talking to. But then when it comes to yourself, oh, you can beat yourself up for you didn't get it right and you missed it here. And if somebody talked to you the way you talk to yourself, you'd probably punch them in the nose sometimes,
exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what are some things that you've learned about that internal godness or that divinity that you need to allow to be expressed?
Honestly, one of the biggest keys for me has been healthy boundaries.
Oh, beautiful.
And about being able to set healthy boundaries in life so that it can reverberate back. Also as an empath, because I think there's so many of us, you know, you're one, Gail's one, and it's about understanding that just because we can fix things doesn't mean that's our job.
That's good.
And I did have a neighbor that asked to be read by me, and I picked up on an element of divorce in her body. And she asked me about this specific area. A lot of times people that have issues under the scapula or have some knots back there, it tends to be divorce related in some capacity. And she acknowledged she had some parents that were having a situation. And then later on, another neighbor came to me and said, I heard that you told so-and-so they were getting a divorce. She just got married a year ago and now she's really afraid.
What happened?
Well, it turns out she was afraid before I said that. And it was reaffirming those thoughts that she was having about herself. But I felt really badly because she misunderstood my words and my message. And I wanted to call her for a couple days, and I kept getting the message, don't call her.
Ooh, wow.
And eventually, after the 2 days, I got a message that it's none of your business how other people take the information that you give.
Interesting.
And it's really like, good. When you come from your heart, you're never wrong.
Yeah.
But however people take it isn't really up to you. And that was a big lesson that I had to learn many times over before understanding that.
Yeah, because that's kind of a big thing when you're feeling that intuitive hit. You want to offer information to someone, but the way they take it and what they do with it, that can't be your responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet there's a lot of situations where you were wishing maybe it's like, ooh, I have to tell them that. Ooh, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, there's many times, and usually that's when I know for sure that I have to tell them is when I don't want to.
Oh, it's good.
And being in that position, because you know it does when we have an aha moment. Sometimes it can be very emotional. But that's also a big part of the healing process is being able to understand, you know, where does this come from and how does it start?
Now, one thing that has been really important on my journey is SWIHA, the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. And I know that you're a SWIHA graduate.
I am.
And you did some class work there. How did you come across SWIHA? How did that come into your sphere?
It was very serendipitous. I had a friend that was going there that encouraged me to go. And at the time, that was a crossroads in my life where I was really struggling, and I had already been fired from every job that I ever thought that I wanted. I got off all those medications that I was on, and I had to do something with my life, and I didn't want to type or do math.
Yes, two great life goals.
I was already good at massage work per se, so I decided to go to massage school, and that's really when the floodgates started opening. I'm so grateful that I ended up at SWIHA because I was able to develop these abilities further. But I just did the traditional Swedish massage classes, and I would notice right away when I would touch people that I could either hear things going on in their bodies, or see things that I use the air quotes for random, because it's never random.
Yeah.
It's never an accident.
Yeah.
But it's about being able to give a voice to those things so that the person recognizes that whatever I'm picking up on is meant as a message for them, and it's meant to create healing.
That's so good. What are some examples of those random hits that you'd get when you're doing massage?
One of the first things I picked up on was knee pain with somebody, and I said, "It sounds like your knee is crying," and the person said, "Oh my God, I just tweaked my knee this morning while I was running." Or I'd see gumball machines, and the person said, "I have gumball machines all over my house. I'm obsessed with them."
Wow. And you're like, gumball machines?
Exactly. It was...
Where did that come from, you're thinking? Yeah.
But whatever it was that I picked up on, I felt comfortable enough to share it until I got a message about cancer related. And I didn't share it with her, but then the person confided in me a couple months later that she was diagnosed with cancer. And I went to some of the instructors at Sweha, and I was like, what is wrong with me? You know, am I the Grim Reaper now? Like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
Because all the medications were suppressing these abilities. And so this was kind of new for me.
Yeah, so now they're on full high alert now.
High alert, and about being able to find a way to use that to help people. But I do call it going through your files, and I try not to go through other people's files without their permission. But when people are permissive, that's when I get the most information.
Yeah.
And it's all designed for whatever needs they have at the time. And that's very individual.
Yeah. So you transitioned, do you still do the massage, or did you transition into other modalities?
I decided to let go of my massage license to concentrate on the energy work, because that's really what I love to do the most. And I did have, in the beginning, it developed where I took Reiki, and I absolutely loved it, and then I became obsessed with energy work, and I wanted to learn every modality that there was. So I took craniosacral therapy and hypnotherapy and polarity, and I became a certified toe reader. And all these things, I would pick these aha moments that people would have, and I started combining the session into an energy work type thing. I didn't really know what to call it, but people loved it.
Yeah.
So several of my classmates sent other classmates to see me, and then eventually had people coming to my home, and I opened up my own practice doing this thing. So I started offering it in student clinic, just because I really enjoyed doing it more than massage, even though that's what I was getting my license in. So I had one man, after I did the energy work session on him, say, "Do you know you're doing a Peruvian death ceremony on people?"
Wow. So that's shaman work.
It is.
Yeah.
And at the time, you know, I came from the Midwest, and I was a very, very white bread girl.
Yeah.
And had no concept of any of what he was saying. And I asked him to elaborate, and he said, if you were in another culture and you wanted to feel better, or you needed help, or you had a disease, or any of those factors, you would go to a shaman or a witch doctor, and they would give you a medicine, and you'd lay down, and then they would do this thing like very similar to what you just did on me. And I had to Google it.
Where is Peru?
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And the ceremony that he was talking about was eerily similar to this thing that I had created. And I still use it today in the meditations that I do in my events, and also in my individual work with people. I feel like it's a really simple and important way to understand our energy and create duality in the mind.
Wow. So you're giving some of the modalities you've learned, and you're incorporating all of this together. Now, is that a hands-on thing, or is that something you can do over the phone or Skype?
It's either in person or on video. Energy work is such a beautiful thing in that way, because you can do it from anywhere, and it still works in whatever way that it's used.
Yeah.
So I don't do a lot of like hands-on per se, but there is kind of a protocol with which that we get to that point, and it's about getting to that understanding of, you know, how our energy flows.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Now, I do like technology, that it's allowed us to be in a space. You know, I can be on my private island floating around while you're on your private jet, and we
That's
can
right.
we can Skype
Yep.
or FaceTime
We
together.
sure can.
So, and I do like that you're able to do the energy work, because energy is not confined to I have to be able to be in the same room to have
Right.
work with you. We can do it
Absolutely.
over that. So give presence to the work that you do and how people find you and contact you.
You know, it's been mostly by word of mouth ever since I started. Some people find me online. I'm always open to, I feel like the people that find me have something in common with me. Most people are empaths or animal people. But what they all have in common is that they're ready to hear the truth about themselves. And part of that is understanding, you know, how did we screw it up, and now how are we going to fix it?
Yeah. Yeah, you wound it up this way. Well, you got to kind of unwind it a little bit, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I imagine that you're able to offer advice to people. Well, if you want to have an optimal pathway, this is a really good way to do it. Now, I know that diet and exercise are important to you. Give some presence to your lifestyle, the things that you coach people on with diet and exercise.
Thank you for asking that, because I feel like that can be a huge component in the self-care department.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we are programmed to throw ourselves under the bus for others, or that selfish is a dirty word.
Yeah, one thing I've learned from Sweetheart is self-care is health-care. I was like, that was amazing.
Exactly. And I actually in 2011 started developing chronic back pain, and you know, was told by some relatives and other people, you know, that's just part of getting older. And for about a year, I spent a lot of time bedridden because I was
Wow.
having so much pain. And I was like, what I felt like I was facing was either slow death or live life. And I was like, I'm not going out like this. And so I made a commitment to exercise, and I started doing it on a regular basis. And I started doing it like 2 or 3 times a week. And the days where I exercised, that was all I could do for the whole day. And then I had to go back to bed. And eventually, after a few years, joined a gym. But it was like working out became one of my jobs. And that was something that I realized that it's not about liking it or disliking it. It's about doing it. And the less emotional attachment that we have, the better off we are.
That's good.
And about understanding that food is fuel, and it's not designed to have emotions involved.
Tell me more.
Well, there's also the epigenetic component, which falls into food a lot of times. Are you familiar with epigenetics at all?
I know a little bit about Joe Dispenza's work, but
Okay.
I don't know enough to be educated on it. Tell me about it.
I'll use an example of one of my neighbors that actually came to my house a couple of years ago, and I was just about to have dinner, and so I sat down and offered to serve her a portion of the meal. And I tried to put some veggies on her plate. She's like, no, I don't do vegetables. I'm like, no vegetables at all? Come on. She's like, no, I hate them. They're awful. And I said, you know, I wouldn't be me if I didn't at least offer this to you. You have a negative emotional attachment to vegetables. No, I don't. They're just disgusting, like you don't even understand.
Wow.
And so, you know, I let it go. A couple months later, she came back to my house one evening, and she's like, I have to talk to you. And she was 52 at the time. And she said she had had her first meeting with her father, and they went out to dinner. They'd never met before. Their food came out, and By the way, she said whenever she put vegetables in her mouth, they made her feel like she was going to vomit.
Oh, wow.
So when the food came out, her father says, "Do you want my vegetables?" And she's like, "That's what I always say." He's like, "Oh, no, that's what I always say."
Huh.
And she's like, "No, you don't understand. I can't eat vegetables because the texture just makes me feel like, I can't do it." And he said, "No, you don't understand. When I was 4 years old, your aunt babysat for me. She fed me vegetables. I vomited, and she made me eat my own vomit."
Oh, come on. That's
I know.
not awesome.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not. It's not.
like-
it's not gross. It's
right?
that as an adult. What are you doing?
I know. And
Yeah.
now I'm traumatizing you too. Sorry. But
and all of us.
sorry. However, this traumatic moment in this man's history was transferred to his daughter
Yeah.
without them even meeting.
Wow.
That's how powerful we
Yeah.
are, and how this energy gets transferred, and how we take on burdens for our loved ones so often in these situations.
Wow.
So she was literally having a physical response to an emotional trauma. It had nothing to do with the vegetables.
Yeah.
And that's another component. If we think this is bad for me and then we eat it, our body has no choice but to respond according to what we think about what we're eating. So that's also another element to consider with exercise and with diet, to leave the emotion out of it and just make it about self-care and making it a commitment to just do it.
Yeah. When I was a child, my mother had made beans for dinner, and it just looked awful. And I was probably 8 or 9 years old. I'm like, I don't want beans. I was looking for French fries or something.
Right.
And they said, "This is what's for dinner. Beans is what we're eating." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not eating it." And they're like, "Well, then you can go to bed." I'm like, "Okay." So I went to bed. The next morning, I get up expecting oatmeal because I'm really hungry. Got to go to school. My dad made my mom serve me beans again.
Oh, no.
I said, "I can't do this." I'm crying. I'm 9.
Oh, no.
And my mom goes, "I'm not going to make him eat beans. If he can't eat beans, he won't eat beans." So I remember the feeling of being rescued. Having my mom step in, interceding for me. So, to think that somebody, an adult, would do that as a child, saying, "You threw it up, now you got to eat it." That just that feels like such an injustice. And I think that's my visceral response on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it happens. So you're also a prolific artist. I want to give presence to your work. You've got this beautiful chakra print here.
Yes.
So I think this is amazing.
Thank you.
This is a beautiful piece of work. I'll put it here so you guys can see it. Tell me about this. Tell me about the chakras, the colors, the shapes. Tell me what you got going on here.
This is a mini version of an original piece that I also have prints for sale on.
50 feet tall?
It's 3 by 4
Close.
feet, so it's not quite that huge, but it's pretty big. But it represents the chakra system, or specifically when I made it, it more represents my chakra system. But what I find, and why I brought it here today, is because I use it as a visual aid for all my clients and when I do events, because it really helps people get a visualization of how our own energy flows in our bodies. So when we look at this red one here, this is the energy system that represents the base of our spine. And then it goes all the way up to the tops of our heads. And so understanding each of these colors and the energy that they represent, just even that is a simple way of understanding how our own energy flows. For example, so if you take these colors and pick which one's your favorite and pick which one's your least favorite. Would you like to play along?
Oh, we get to play. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I don't feel a least favorite, but if I were to be drawn to this, I really like the Anahata chakra, and I really like the blue because it looks like my blue eyes, and you have beautiful blue eyes too. We're the Blue Eye Club.
Yes.
So those are the ones that I'm drawn to. I probably would be least drawn to the yellow one.
Okay, perfect. So that in itself is when I ask what's your favorite color, you're telling me something about your own energy. And the same with the least favorite. So your most favorite chakra system is going to represent which system is most dominant for you. Or a lot of times there might be life lessons or something that is a lineage thing where it's designed for mass healing. But of course, the first one that you pick is the love chakra.
Yeah.
So big heart.
Yep.
And then this one here that you picked represents our intuition.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And I'll get into all those as well. But this guy here, the one that's your least favorite, is our connection to our power, or like it's yellow, or it represents like solar power type energy if you look at it in that way. So I'll start from the bottom and we'll go up, and then I'll elaborate a little bit more. And this is...
Well, isn't that interesting? Because I have personal circumstances in which I feel powerless, and I'm trying to not feel the energy of being a victim.
All right.
And isn't that interesting?
Isn't that?
A little insight into Dave's personal life. Stop thinking, don't think anymore.
Exactly. Get out of your own way.
That's good.
And we can get into that too, because there are questions that I ask to help people understand where those blockages are. And part of that is an emotional trigger. So when I ask certain questions, if somebody has an emotional trigger about that question, then that is a way to tell which system is blocked. So I'll get into the red one first. That represents our connection with Earth, any material possessions, our career, things like that represent the energy of that chakra system. And also any organs in that area represent what's going on in that part of the body. So this guy here is one of my favorite ones to talk about, because a lot of people come to me with financial blockages. And if somebody says, I don't like the orange one, they're telling me that's the system that's blocked. And that represents our finances. It also represents our sexuality. It also represents flow and relationships, because it's also right where the kidneys are.
Yeah.
And then as you go up, the adrenals represent that energy. So we've got the power coming into play. So are you ready for my favorite question that I like to ask people?
Yes.
Because this is going to be, I think, important for you.
Okay.
So one of the questions that I love asking is, how do you feel if or when you were to be pulled over by the police?
Well, I mean, if I'm pulled over by the police, it's most likely because I was driving too fast, and I would be afraid. I would be scared because I don't want to receive a citation for an infraction.
Right,
Yes.
of course. So there's fear, which happens with a lot of people. And by the way, when those lights, when we see them, that's designed to flip our chakra system upside down and create shock. So try not to look at the lights. They are designed to do that, to work with our energy system. So now that you already know how the energy flows and you know how the brain works, so the brain doesn't care about these outside relationships, and your brain doesn't care about the cops. So what I'm really asking you, Dave, is how you feel about your own power.
Okay. Sometimes
Does that
I
make sense?
feel out of control, and that I
Yes.
don't have power in some of the situations in which I'm going through in my personal life. Yes.
Right. When the truth is you're extremely powerful. And sometimes that can be very challenging to manage, because it feels like it's out of control, because it's all over the place.
Yeah. It's good.
Does that make sense for you?
Yes, it does. And while we're on camera, I won't say anything else.
Okay.
Stop it.
That's hilarious. But that's one of the really, we get very personal and get into these questions about understanding emotional triggers. So when I ask that question, I want to know, you don't have to necessarily tell me the whole story about the incident, but what I want to know is, did this incident create a positive, negative, or neutral emotional charge, because that charge is literally electricity in our brain.
Yeah.
And we want as much positive charge as possible. And part of that is being able to work with all these different energy systems. And I'll move it up. And is your hand getting tired? See how that exercise is good for you.
I like to keep it up here so these guys can see it on the camera.
Thank you. And that's good self-care. So as we move up, we get into power, especially with the sky solar power. This one represents love and unconditional love as well. So the letting go process is relaxing, but the receiving process, in order to receive unconditional love, we also have to relax for that too.
True, yeah.
Which can be even a little more challenging for some people because we're also programmed to feel unworthy of unconditional love.
That's so good, yeah.
So as we move up, this is heart, this is throat. And if someone tells you, I have neck problems, what they're really telling you is they have throat chakra issues, or their throat chakra is blocked, or that's one of their main themes in life is communicating. And communicating from the heart, because it pulls that energy up. So the next one is designed to look like an eyeball, because that represents our third eye. We do have similar cells from our eyes, like the cells that are in our eyes also are in that part of our brain right there. That's part of the reason why it's called the third eye.
Oh, fascinating.
And so that's our intuition, or where we get that intuitive hit. And also, in contrast, gut issues, when people feel something from their guts, it's also really important to acknowledge that. When we don't listen to our gut, a lot of times we can develop gut issues or stomach issues as a result.
Yeah.
So the organs that correspond with these are all telling us something depending on what our computer system is reflecting. So we've got intuition, and this guy here, the purple chakra, is the crown, or right at the top of the head. That represents our spiritual connection, or our connection with our higher self, or with God. I let people call it whatever it is that they want.
Yeah.
I feel like the energy of it is what my focus is on.
Yeah.
And understanding that.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks for giving presence to that, because that
Absolutely.
is such a beautiful way to look at it, the chakra system, and realize that there's that energetic connection, there's that physical connection.
We all have a rainbow inside of us, which is why we love to look at rainbows in the skies, because it's reflective of us.
Awesome. Beautiful.
Thank you.
As we close, I like to ask the guest, what is this one thing that, if there's something that people would take away from your work and your message, what is that one thing that you want people to know?
That we're all made up of energy, and we all have a right, or we all deserve to understand how to work with our own energy and our own flow. And that's the truth about ourselves.
Yeah. Awesome. Give presence to your website for those people that are listening on the podcast.
Thank you. It's www.christinenoble.org. Christine is spelled Chrisastine. Last name is Noble, Noble. I did have someone ask me recently if that was my real name. Yes, it is.
It's my stage name, but thanks for asking.
It's perfect for energy work, so I might as well embrace it.
That's beautiful. Well, I appreciate your work. Thanks for being...
I appreciate yours.
Thanks for being part of the journey.
Absolutely.
And I think you're awesome.
Thank you. Likewise.
High five.
High five.
I'm David Marsh, and you've been watching Exploring the Human Journey on YouTube as a video and listening as a podcast. If you would like to help continue the conversation, please consider supporting us by visiting patreon.com, where you can support us on a monthly basis and get extra bonus content. For as little as $1 a month, you can make this show sustainable and help continue spiritual consciousness. You can also help by following us on Facebook and Instagram. For more information about the show, find us online at exploringthehumanjourney.com.